So this is Ted Flett of Golden Skate, and I'm joined by Coach Tom Zakrajsek here in Colorado Springs. Thanks so much for chatting with us today.
For sure, nice to be here.
So we're between seasons, but this isn't your typical sort of, off-season sandwich because of the magnitude of next season.
Right.
How are you feeling? How is the summer going? Generally, how would you describe it?
I would say I'm feeling pretty good. This is actually my third Olympic cycle where I've had athletes that are contenders. And so just me personally, I feel much more confident about going through that process with them. I also know Max and Mirai and Vincent very well, and that makes it easier too. Mm-hmm. So like right now, July 6th, everything's good.
Okay, excellent. Knowing the skaters better than, say, if it was your first season with one of them, can you give us a bit of a reveal on what are some of the different push buttons and how you adjust your coaching to the three different personalities?
Sure. I mean, the big thing I think is language of skating, right? How each coach talks to their athlete about how they want them to move, right? And so I think every coach has their own language, and that's probably the biggest thing that happens in the first season with an athlete. So thankfully with these three, that's not an issue. In terms of working with them differently, that's kind of an interesting question, because when we're in the training mode, they just have to meet certain training markers that are standard for me as a coach. So there's really no give and take there.
Okay. They're adjusting more to you than you adjust
in that training phase, like okay. July, August for sure. Mm-hmm. But once we get in season and start competing and that type of thing, that's where it's tailored more to them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And
their emotional needs and kind of where their confidence is at.
Right.
But we won't know that for a few months yet.
Sure. So let's drill a bit deeper. I mean, let's start with Vincent ZHOU, for example. Coming off the success of last season, so U.S. silver medal, and then the gold at the World Junior Championships in Taiwan. How amazing was that? And then how do you help to channel and continue that momentum, keep him down on earth, and continue to strive for success?
So with Vincent, it's just so easy. He is such a great student. As you might suspect, he's, really consistent. His effort level is really super duper high every day. So in terms of him, it's so easy to coach him. And I say this to him and his mom, and Drew and Tammy and I talk about this a lot. Like really anybody coaching Vincent probably would look good. He's that good. That said, he also has to be pushed and challenged in certain moments. But he's really good about that, right? He's always been the kind that has wanted to have the total package, but he doesn't want to just be a jumper, right? He wants to be a complete skater. So the big push for him this season is making that transition from World Junior Champion to, Olympian.
Yeah.
Right.
So, how do you go about that? How do you approach the development of his program components?
That's, in this case, honestly, it's a team effort between Tammy, Drew, and I. It's kind of a unique coaching situation. I know a lot of people have been really curious as to who's Vincent's coach and how's that working, but in actuality, we're all working together. We all have very special ways that we work with him, and that makes it easier. Tammy has worked with him the longest and groomed him, so she knows a lot about what makes him tick when he competes. Mm-hmm. And Drew and I have worked with him mostly since he's been in Colorado Springs, and we have our unique roles. Obviously, as most people might think, I'm the technician part of it, but also contribute a lot to training. And to be honest, we're working really closely with Brandon Cycle at the Olympic Training Center because Vincent has a very ambitious program with 6 quads in the free skate, and that's really uncharted territory. So what's a training plan for that? What does that look like? And obviously Vincent gets a lot of say in that because he's the one that has to do all the work. So, really, in talking about him, it's a team approach, and it's really fun. It's actually fun and exciting to work that way.
Okay. So are you, conference calling back to California on a regular basis? Do they report into you?
Yeah.
And then
just like that.
Often there needs to be one captain of the ship.
Yeah.
So what happens if you're not quite on the same page in terms of, an ideal choice or a next step for Vincent?
That's the nitty gritty of working through it. And to be honest, there haven't been too many of those moments because I think we're both really clear on what our roles are with him and how we all bring something to the table to help him. And I'm really sure that U.S. figure skating is behind the three of us together, trying to get him to the Olympics and hopefully to the podium. So when you feel that kind of support, it makes working through little differences really easy, I think.
So, I mean, Nathan Chen set the bar so high last year, of course, with all the quads. And Vincent was, right there behind him in second place at U.S. Nationals and looking to strive again this season to be hot on his heels. How do you describe sort of the men's event right now in terms of
exciting? I mean, I've never it takes me back to the days when it was Yagudin, Plushenko, Gable, Weiss, and they were all like, when that last warm-up group would go on, everybody would be like, all right, who's going to win it, right? And so we haven't had that in men's figure skating in a while, but I could tell that if you follow just the social media buzz, it's all like, oh my gosh, we got to watch the men. What's going to happen, right? And I think that's a cool place for men's figure skating. People will argue that, the quad guys are less artistic and the guys without the quads are more artistic, and what's the balance? Well, that's always been the argument that's nothing new. You go back to, Timmy Gable and Plushenko and Yagudin, and so to me, that's healthy. That's, there has to be a place for all types of male skaters in figure skating, and what each of them bring to the table should be celebrated. And ultimately, the scoring system that the ISU has in place and the judges in that moment decide who's the best, right? And that's what I think makes people want to tune in, right? Sure. Because you're not sure. It's not automatically going to be ZHOU or Hobby or Patrick, or right? It's any one of...
there's such a mix. The field is so deep. Is it... how tough is it when you're working with Vincent or other skaters like Max as well how hard is it to be artistic when you're setting up all these quads and you sort of need to be in a bit of a zone? It's hard to have a lot of flair when you're doing a setup into revolution jump.
I mean, to be honest, I think Patrick Chan really kind of raised the bar many years ago to show that you could do quads and be artistic, and do two quads, right? And having just worked with him recently, I think he's a really good example of how you can be athletic and artistic at the same time, right? I mean, so there are examples there. And then, I think for me, when I look at social media and read criticism about our top men in the sport, it makes me a little sad, honestly, because they're all so outstanding. To say, oh, well, I didn't like this one's program, or yeah, he won, but he had blank spots. I mean, to me, that's all silly, trivial stuff, because you could look at all of those men and go, wow, they put a lot of effort and time to train whatever they had, whatever program they had, to go out there and do that in front of people. To me, that should all be celebrated. All that diversity in the men should be celebrated, and that's what's going to lift our sport up, not putting people down for, on the flip side of it, for not being able to do a quad, right? That's, to me, that has no place in how it should have no place in how we talk about the men's event.
Yeah. And on the topic of men, and shifting to one of your other pupils, Max Aaron, a very different season from Vincent for Max in terms of just the struggles last year, and then a very unfortunate U.S. National Championships where he finished 10th. I
actually think he was 9th overall, but it was low.
It was 10th.
Maybe. Or I don't remember. It was just very far. He hasn't had a nationals like that since San Jose.
Agreed.
Yeah. So
what did the conversations look like with Max after that?
It was tough, honestly. Probably he'd be the best person to talk about that. And I'm not laughing in a way where, for me, I totally respect Max and he totally respects me. But those are the nitty-gritty moments of coaching. We both got through it. It wasn't easy. But I think ultimately we both know each other really well. And we were both able to be honest with each other about how to move forward. Because it really is ultimately about him doing well, right? It doesn't matter how many years I've coached him or what I brought to the table in the past. If we can't work together now, it makes no difference. But so I think we're in took a few months, but we're in a really good place, and he's in an awesome place in terms of training. And he's going to up his ante in every, single part of his skating, right?
Can you shed any light?
I mean, obviously, well, sure, for sure. I mean, if any of the fans were following him last season, you know that he was trying quad toes in practices and at certain events, not with much success. But certainly that's going to be in the short for sure and the long for sure. Whether he does 4 quads or 3 quads is kind of up in the air right now. I mean, I think he's got 2 really great programs. I think I'll leave it for him to talk about those, that Catherine Hill has done for him. So he's working with a new choreographer, and it seems really fresh. And, you know, without talking too much into the future, I think I'm excited for people to see a different Max. And I know I've said that in a few seasons prior, but I think this year it's coming really from his heart and from him wanting to do every single thing he can for an entire season, not just part of a season. And I'm already starting to see a big change and a big improvement.
Okay. And how do you sort of work now to achieve some of the results from 2015 to 2016 with the Skate America win and regaining his spot on the world team?
So for me, it's really not about the past, but obviously periodically we talk about previous successes as a template for how to move forward and springboard to maybe even a higher level. So the fact that you just brought all that up is why Max is still a contender, right? Because he has a history. His ISU ranking is actually quite high, even though he had a rough season last year. So he's got several years where he built a good foundation. And I think, so from that standpoint, it's easy to pick what was working and really, because there were 4 or 5 different seasons of success, to kind of go through and comb through and figure out, yes, this really works. Or are we sure this worked? Or are we both just thinking that it worked, right? So we're able to do that because of the long relationship we have, and that certainly makes it more precise. And we both feel good, I think, about the decisions we're making because we have that foundation.
Okay. And then shifting lastly to your third pupil, of lots of interest, Mirai Nagasu in the ladies event. So Mirai also came off, a season of highs and lows. Was in a great position to earn a spot on the world team at the U.S. Nationals, and unfortunately fell short in the long program. But then rallied again at 4 continents, which is also becoming a bit of a tradition for her. So, coming off of last season, what did that conversation look like with Mirai?
Very easy. Because she was the first alternate for Worlds, she actually trained for 3 weeks after 4 continents. She competed at the Denver Invitational and put the triple axel out, landed it on 1 foot. It was downgraded. It wasn't her best attempt, but we planned on whether she went to Worlds or not, continuing the season, so that she knew what that pacing felt like for when she would be in a position to continue the season. So we got a lot out of last season. I always say to the skaters, when they're kind of so very publicly failing, it gives everyone a lot of information, right? Particularly me and everybody on her support team, and Mirai, right? So when you have a season like that of ups and downs, you really get a good handle on how to get the up more often. And so, yes, I mean, Mirai put herself back in the game by doing so well at 4 continents. But really, I'll go back to what I said the first year that I coached her. She is the perfect combination of athleticism and grace. And I think everyone has high hopes for her still, even since 2010. And it's going to be 8 years. But to me, she really is like a fine wine. I mean, she's learned the triple axel later in her career, and so many coaches, including Mie Hamada from Japan, and some of my Russian colleagues have told me that she's really an inspiration. They're using video of her that's on social media to show the young girls that they don't have to learn these jumps when their bodies are really tiny, that Mirai has a mature body and she's jumping better than ever. And I think it's a little bit a part of her story, right? She's maturing with age and getting better and stronger. And the challenge for both of us is to continue working together and figure out how to create a totally stable season for her, where each competition she's meeting a minimum standard in the short and the long, because she had the of course, the great short program in Autumn Classic, right?
Yes.
That stood
700
up,
points.
yes, as one of the highest scores of really the women. I think it even stood up pretty well at the World Championships. So that potential was there, right, to do really, really well. So putting that together with her free skate in 4 continents was a big goal, to have 2 programs. She didn't quite get that, right? She got the short program was there. She had the unfortunate miss on the loop, but then the free skate. So to put the short from Autumn Classic and the free skate from 4 continents together in many competitions, like 2 or 3, that's a huge goal this fall.
Sure.
She's won medals in the Grand Prix before, never made the final. I know that's kind of on her bucket list. And in this season where U.S. figure skating is going to be selecting its team by looking at a body of work and not one competition, that's like really like to the front of Mirai's mind as like a goal. So not that she's focusing on the outcome, but she's realizing how important it is to show that consistency of performance.
Do you think, is it your recommendation or your approach or thought that she will start to compete with the triple axel on a regular basis?
I mean, it's set. She just came back from working with Jeff on her new long, and it was set. And that was part of the reason last season the program wasn't set for a triple axel. And in a skater's mind, it is very different when you acquire a skill mid-season and then try to add it to the program the way it started out.
Yeah.
So the axles and the long, and I'm confident because she's done so many for so many months now that that will still be the plan.
Okay. So we now know the music for her long program, which will be Miss Saigon. Mirai has shared that with us.
Great.
We know that in last year's long program, you and the two of you didn't quite agree on what the approach should be. Can you tell us about that experience? And can you tell us, like, were you immediately thumbs up or thumbs down on Miss Saigon? Were there other options?
Well, first of all, I don't know if I should say what the plan was going in, but there were 2. Okay, well, I thought there were 2 pieces on the table from Queen and Firebird.
Okay.
And it ended up being Miss Saigon, so it ended up being nothing like what we had talked about prior.
Right.
And so when she came back and she started showing glimpses of it, I asked her if I was going to be surprised, and she said no. And so I was thinking, when I heard Miss Saigon, I said to Drew, I was like, this is Miss Saigon, right? He's like, yeah. And I was like, I thought she was doing Firebird. Did she get a new short? And of course, I mean, the way I work with many of the top choreographers is they are experts. I don't have to have a say in the music. And of course, Miss Saigon is iconic. It's a great piece of music. Yeah. It's probably the best choice, and I totally trust Jeff. So in this instance, it's just easy. And the program is probably her most difficult ever.
Okay.
And I was talking to her today because she did her first full run through, and I said, did Jeff give you any advice to train? And she laughed and she said, no, he just said good luck. And that's kind of it, because when you see the program, you're going to understand there's a lot of complexity in it. Okay. And we're aware that kind of the criticism of Mirai at 4 Continents was that, yes, she skated well, but there were gaps in the program where she came out to hit the technical stuff.
Okay.
So that's not criticism that escapes us. So obviously, a big goal is to address that and have her do the complete program with all the technical content and the triple axel, right? And her beautiful spins. So, that's why she's starting in July, and hopefully be ready by the time the Grand Prix comes around.
Right. So interesting that Firebird was one of the options, or one of the pieces on the table. Given that Gracie Gold had skated a Firebird just a couple of seasons ago and really had her fingerprints on it all over.
And Evan Lysacek won the Olympics with it.
Sure.
And,
Firebird. So was there ever thought of this
not at all, because you could say that about Miss Saigon, and a lot of Olympic music has to be iconic. To me, the criteria is easily identifiable. Everybody in the audience, including not just the judges, but the physical audience, the TV audience, they have to get it right away. And so Firebird is one of those pieces. I was confident that if actually had been that Mirai would have made it her own and not done something like Gracie did or Evan did or, whatever.
And continuing with her same short program from last year, is that a decision that you support?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we heard from so many officials, not just in our country, but all over the world, how much they love the program. And when you get that kind of feedback, it kind of basically says we're keeping it, right? And not only do they say it just verbally, but they said it through the scoring of the program too. So, we're confident that if Mirai delivers the goods like she can technically, that it'll put her right near the top where she needs to be.
Okay. And it was revealed this week that Evgenia Medvedeva, the world champion, is also going to be skating to that music for the show program.
Yes, I saw that.
Is that worrisome to you?
Not at all. No, not at all. I think for me, they're going to do it in two different ways because they're two different skaters, right? So that's what I'll say about that.
Okay.
And probably the great thing is it'll add a little intrigue to following the ladies' event. Indeed. Because they're at one event together, aren't they?
Yes, I think so.
Yes.
On the Grand Prix
Yeah,
so
Russia.
We'll be able to do a bit of a...
So it'll be like the Battle of the Carmens or...
The Battle of the Chopins. It doesn't have quite the same ring to it.
No, it doesn't.
Who knows? It might.
Yes.
I mean, Evgenia has become such a champion at attempting so much difficulty in the back half of the program. Have you ever had the thought that we need to start doing this to compete?
No.
No other woman, to my knowledge, does that.
Right. No, to be honest, I hear so much criticism about that, honestly, and not just from U.S. officials, but officials around the world, that, yes, it's allowable in the rules, but in the terms of well-balanced programs, does it really fit that kind of criteria? You can see it's not hurting her in the scoring when she skates great. She's just going to pull big marks, so it doesn't matter. Who knows how she'll be scored this season, but, I mean, she is a phenomenon and incredible and captivating, and Mirai and I have great respect for her. So, I think it's exciting what she does for ladies figure skating. We haven't really had a consistent lady from any country in many, many years, right? I mean, you really have to go back to Michelle Kwan to figure out a woman who consistently performed in the Grand Prix, in the final, at Worlds, at their nationals, right? I mean, there have been successful ladies since Michelle Kwan, but not with, Evgenia's kind of consistency. So hats off to her, and she's such an inspiration. In fact, all my young developmental female figure skaters, we watch her and look up to her and model her and talk about her a lot because she's great.
Well, and the women's field in the U.S. is also incredibly deep.
Yeah.
And there isn't there are
it's incredibly deep, but they're not all incredibly consistent.
No, absolutely not. So, I mean, really, the Olympic team could be almost any sort of mix. And, one skater will jump ahead and one will fall back. And Kalina Edmonds will step out due to injury, and Carrie Chen will burst on the scene. What's your assessment of the state of ladies skating in the US
think it's, from my point of view, honestly, just focus on the work and preparing Mirai. It's that simple. If I'm trying to be a pundit about it, I would say it makes it really interesting to watch, right? Because everybody's going to want to see who comes out ahead early in the season, who can keep that consistency going, who's going to be the solid performer, can a U.S. lady make the final, right? So from that point of view, it makes it really interesting for people to tune in and watch.
Yeah. You spend a lot of time setting up your skaters to be able to perform this season and, stay calm and nerves and so forth. Do you get nervous? The Olympics are 7 months away. Do you start to get jitters? And how do you address that?
Okay. Honestly, when I think about nationals leading up to the Olympics, I get this exciting feeling. Some people could call that nerves, but to me, it's more like a high that I live off of, honestly. So not in a way where I'm nervous or afraid. The only time I'm really nervous is when I know my athletes aren't prepared. So if they're not prepared, I can't really be prepared to coach them because I don't know what I'm going to get or what I'm going to see. I don't know if you're aware of my reputation, but I try not to let that happen. So I try to make sure they're trained. I kind of insist on it.
That are solid.
Yes. Well, yeah. So that's, equipment issues.
Yeah, sure.
It is. It is important. Sometimes you just can't control that. I heard the stories about Nathan Chen's boots at Worlds, and it's just, to me, it's the way the sport is being pushed in that kind of technical envelope, and it shows the limits of the actual boot and blade and technology. that constant repetition of those jumps
sure.
wear out the boots and the blades more. And so skaters are just dealing with a lot of different issues now than probably they ever had before in the past, where they were just doing triple jumps and they just stayed in their boots for like a whole year, maybe a year and a half or two, right?
Yeah.
That just isn't the case anymore. So I think that's why boot issues can, be more of a factor. I will tell you though that particularly in Mirai, the issues now with the boots are really related to the triple axle and her doing so many, and in order to get it consistent, and the boot having to withstand that impact on the landing foot, right? Because it's 7 times your body weight, and it's a lot of gravity pulling you down, and that's a lot of force. If you do 10 a day over 6 months, that's a lot of impact to that right boot. So maybe sometimes the fans and people in the audience don't really realize how skaters can go through equipment, and it's not even through abuse. It's just normal practice, but it just takes its toll, right?
Yeah, fair. Great. Well, listen, best of luck to you and your skaters.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ted. It's great to see you.
Yeah, thanks for chatting.
All right.
Let's stay in touch.
Come back to Colorado anytime.
I'll do it.
All right. I'm going back to work, everybody.
Thanks,
okay.
Tom.
Yeah, see ya.